During the height of the pandemic, Pastor Tony Spell expects a crowd of more than 2,000 to gather in worship at his megachurch on Sundays, proclaiming God will shield us from all harm and sickness. These kinds of leaders give religion a bad name, which has allowed for discrimination against religious organizations. Even though our First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In times of uncertainty, people seek support from their religious community. So we need to address religious intolerance during COVID restrictions because the Pew Research Center November 19, 2020 concludes that nearly 77% of Americans affiliate with their religion, but were not able to exercise their constitutional right to freely and safely practice their beliefs. While online services are available, they cannot replace in-person practices. News Gallup April 6, 2020 asserts that the abrupt cessation of in-person worship in churches, synagogues, and mosques around the country is one of the most significant sudden disruptions in the practice of religion in U.S. history. First, we'll examine the problem of church restrictions. Second, we'll explore the causes of these constraints, while finally looking for solutions. Because religious or not, this is a call to everyone for empathy, to regard religious organizations with respect and consideration. The social distancing restrictions created significant problems for churches, including violating their First Amendment, unfair court rulings, and disastrous psychological effects. At the onset of the pandemic, churches were forced to either move online or cease to hold religious services altogether. NPR, May 20, 2020, reports that 90% of those who regularly attended religious services indicate that their congregation were closed entirely due to coronavirus-related restrictions. NBC News, July 24, 2020, declares that this was an unconstitutional violation of its parishioners' First Amendment right to exercise their beliefs, since churches were not granted the same rights as other businesses to reopen, even if they followed the same health protocol. Despite the growing number of COVID cases, strip clubs, among other businesses, ironically, were not stripped of their ability to operate, as the Telegraph December 10, 2020 alleges that some clubs even allowed lap dances, as long as masks are worn. In addition, the U.S. Department of Justice, September 25, 2020, stresses that San Francisco had a policy of only allowing a single worshiper in places of worship, regardless of size. Yet they allowed for multiple patrons in other indoor settings, including gyms, tattoo parlors, hair salons, and massage studios. In fact, LA Times, July 24, 2020, exposes that in Nevada, casinos were allowed to operate at a 50% capacity with proper social distancing. However, the Supreme Court denied the Christian Church east of Reno the same standard. While some of you may not practice a religion, please understand that religious organizations provide free social and emotional support, without which we'll experience devastating increases in mental health effects. Psychology Today, June 7, 2020 warns that attendance at religious services has long been shown to reduce suicide risk compared to non-attenders. So losing this support may make social isolation harder to bear. And 75,000 additional people could die from deaths of despair. Unfortunately, these predictions have become reality. As Manhattan emergency room physician Dr. Lorna Bren, a Christian, became overwhelmed with the rapid influx in patients, religious services were unavailable for support, and tragically, she took her own life. Our freedom of religion is clearly in jeopardy. So let's dive into the causes to see how we got here with urgent decisions and discrimination from our politicians. The Harvard Business Review, March 15th, 2020, explains that the threat, uncertainty, and anxiety of the year led us to make short-sighted decisions that created more problems than they solved. For example, we initially thought that every severe COVID case would need a ventilator. So the government spent $2.9 billion for 190,000 ventilators. But Reuters, April 23, 2020, confesses that for many patients, ventilators caused harm rather than good, despite their original intention. Although there was no malicious intent, ventilator production was a hasty decision amidst the pandemic. Similarly, Governor Cuomo made a hasty decision. As the Associated Press, October 16, 2020, divulges, he is being sued by 3 Jewish congregations for engaging in a streak of anti-Semitic discrimination by restricting religious assembly while allowing for other gatherings with a higher capacity. Clearly, the pandemic allowed for poor choices. The urgency and fear surrounding COVID, in combination with the climate of the election, allowed for hot-tempered comments, continuing to promote religious intolerance in politics. The Hill, September 28, 2020, reveals that Senator Dianne Feinstein criticized Justice Amy Coney Barrett for her Catholic stance on abortion. Yet Feinstein supported Democratic, Catholic Joe Biden, basically saying that it is only okay to be religious in politics if you publicly reject religious teachings. Furthermore, the National Review, August 11, 2020, observes that Vice President Kamala Harris used Brian Bouchier's membership in the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic organization, as grounds for dismissal, which is unconstitutional. Politicians are permitted to disagree on their stances, but you can't say that someone is unfit to serve as a government official simply because they are Muslim, Jewish, or affiliated with any type of religion. This is how intolerance is spread. America will always benefit from disagreement and diversity, but religious persecution cannot be allowed. However, there's a simple solution. First, we'll propose regulations for a safe return to church. And second, we'll unfold the benefits of safe religious practices. Reverend Todd Bell, a proud anti-masker, officiated a wedding in Maine. As The Guardian, September 17, 2020, reveals, he is being considered a super spreader, as the event has been linked to 170 COVID cases and 7 deaths. Unlike Reverend Todd Bell, MSNBC, June 9, 2020, outlines a safe return to church, including temperature checks, no surface contact, hand sanitization, safe distances between worshipers, and masks. A biblical text that I believe addresses this comes from Mark chapter 12, which reads, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." As believers, there is room to both obey the government and worship your God, granted that what is asked does not contradict your faith. Religion and belief can be remarkably helpful in managing stress during times like these. As USA Today, May 22, 2020, praises that worship attendance has been shown to save people's lives. Christians participate in physical sacraments, which you can't get online, such as communion, or eating the bread believed to be the actual body and blood of Jesus. Through these sacraments, they receive graces which help them get to heaven, such as peace, charity, and humility. Characteristics that our country needs now more than ever before. ABC News, September 3rd, 2020, cautions that the next pandemic could arrive at any moment. When designing future safety protocols, rather than categorizing religion with buffets, sports stadiums, and amusement parks, we need to consider prioritizing religious gatherings as essential, whether you are a churchgoer or not. Today, we first went over the problem of church restrictions. Second, the causes of religious intolerance. And finally, solutions for a safe return to church and the benefits we will see from it. Instead of dismissing religious affiliations, we must allow people to practice their beliefs and be open to those which are different from our own. because this is how we'll grow as individuals. And this is how we'll grow as a country. So the next time the government starts making future pandemic protocols, remember, if strip clubs can operate, churches should too.